Welcome to another lesson. Let's keep building our web application. So, one thing I wanted to mention before we continue. From the last time when I did error span on line 29 here, this assumes error span is defined, but that could be a case where when I did the get elements by class name sub 0, that could be undefined. Because of that, I have to do the if error span on line 10. That thing also needs to be done for line 29. So let's add if error span is defined. Place the error span class list add inside the block for that if. Just in case error span were to be undefined, you would not get an error. Now another way of doing this is using the double ampersand. Instead of having the if, you can simply do like this. So this is like it's called an AND operator. So it tests the condition here. If this is true, it goes on to the other condition. And if all the conditions are true, then this whole statement will be true. But if any of the statements starting from the left, if any happens to be false, it stops immediately. It doesn't evaluate anything to the right. So if error span were to be falsy, in this case it will be undefined. Undefined is a falsy value, so this condition would be false. Because this is false, it will not even check anything else because of the nature of the AND operation. This is logic, right? This comes from logic. This is the AND. But if this is true, it will continue checking everything that's chained via the double ampersand. In this case, going to be to the next one. Is this value truthy? If it's not truthy, if it's falsy, it will stop right then and will consider the whole thing to be false and won't. But for our purposes, we do this so that if error span is defined, only if it is a truthy value, if the condition is true, this statement will execute. If this is falsy, it will not execute this part of adding the class to the error span to make the error disappear. Because there is no error span to add class to. So this is an equivalent way of doing this if here. You can do either way. Anyway, just wanted to show you that. Now moving on, I would like to show you a way of improving the code. Usually when you find yourself writing a lot of code in one specific place, that becomes a mess pretty fast. So usually when you program, you want to split things into separate modules. You want to think of modularity, and you want to think of separate functions that have a very well-defined meaning. A function that has typically one concern. You are responsible for doing this and this only, and you do it very well. This other function is responsible for doing something else, and that's something else very well. So that's a pattern. That's a very good practice to follow. One thing I can see right now is the part where we create the new entry and add it to the DOM. That could be one thing we could place in a new function. So we can start like this. So this one creates a new element. It does not depend on anything else coming before, right? It just creates a new element memory. And then it sets the content of that to the entry text. Now, entry text is something that's we depend on that came before on line 5. That could be used as the input to this new function we're going to create. Now, new entry.class list.add entry, that's not dependent on anything. And document get ID, that's not dependent on anything here in this particular area of the code. So we can take this whole thing and we can move it to a function outside. I'm going to call it define a function with keyword function. Let me call it add new entry. And I'm going to paste the code in between the body of the function, that is the opening and closing curly brace. Now we have this name of the function is add new entry. It has to take one single parameter, and that's the entry text, because the entry text, we got it from line, now the line 17, that's outside the scope of this function. So there must be a way to communicate to the add new entry. And by the way, we need to call it in line 28, add new entry. We need to call the function right here. So meaning, what does it mean? Like, you're gonna say add new entry is calling this function, so it's gonna execute the code that's defined in the body of this function. So it's gonna execute new entry, create the element, new entry text, on entry text. This is not defined here. This was defined outside 17. There's no way you can know about that. So you have to pass this as an argument to add new entry. So you say entry text right here. Now we pass this value, new entry text, to the function add new entry. And that has to be defined as a parameter here in the function signature. And let's call it entry text. It could be any name you want, but that any name here, for example, if I call it ABC, you have to call everything that references it ABC. Obviously, ABC is not very good descriptive name. Always make sure to name your variables, parameters, arguments as something very descriptive, that when you get back to your code or anybody else, there are going to be a lot of other developers. They're going to see your code. They're going to understand right away what do you mean. If you just put ABC here, it's going to take some time for whoever reads this code to figure out whatever ABC is. So always make sure to add a very good descriptive name to your variable names. So entry text is passed here, and it goes there. It does change the text of this new div created in the memory. Adds entry class to the new entry, and then finally appends the new entry to the div whose ID is entry list, or element whose ID is entry list. The element does not necessarily have to be a div. I just know it's a div in this case, but just look in line 16. In any case, that's one refactoring, right? We could do, and I'm gonna save it and see if it still works. So always make sure that after making the change, if it still works as intended. So it's working fine. Click error, error disappears, fine. So it's fine now. So we learned how to refactor that into a new function. And this function has its only concern is adding a new entry to the list. Right? It creates a new element, sets the text, adds the class for style, and finally appends that to the list of entries. So I think we're good for now. Let's take a break and I'll see you in the next lesson.